guys, so today's video is going to be my favorite summer palettes for the summer season. I'm going to share with you guys my favorite eyeshadow palettes to wear in the summertime. I've been doing this video every season now, and it's been really fun to talk about my palettes and talk about them a little bit more in depth with you guys and the palettes that I'm going to be concentrating on to use this summer season. And I feel like it's been a better way for me to focus on certain palettes and be able to use certain palettes if I rotate them seasonally and think about what palettes I want to use seasonally rather than just using what I can or trying to get use out of things that I don't use too much. I've found that this is a much better way to rotate my collection and to use what I want to wear and not feel overwhelmed by everything. I mean, you know, I only got 2 eyeballs and I love makeup so much, but I can only test out and wear makeup as much as I can, but I can't wear everything all the time. So this is a really good way of me just rotating things. So let's just jump into it, and I'm going to share with you guys some really good palettes, some of my favorite palettes in my collection, honestly. We're going to start out with ColourPop. I only have 3 palettes to share with you guys, so I wanted to share my first and absolute favorite summer palette from ColourPop, and this is the ColourPop Malibu Barbie palette. I talk about this palette all the time, especially in the summertime, because I don't really use this palette until the summertime, but I have whipped it out a couple of times this past summer season already, and I actually used it before the summer. I used it like once or twice during the spring actually. And I just love this palette for the summertime because it has so many beautiful pops of neon mattes in here. Like you have this wonderful blue, the pink, the yellow, the orange, and then these shimmer shades are so wonderful. This is definitely one of their better palettes formula-wise, and I just think that there's so many different directions that you can go with in this palette. It was so funny because, you know, I say this about everything, but the palettes that I end up wanting to skip over initially and then I end up getting them, I kept on staring at this palette and I saw a couple people use it. At first I was like, I'm not interested. I don't like that color story. And then once I watched a couple of videos on it, I'm like, why aren't I getting this palette? And it's beautiful. I love that you can do a full pink look because you have some great pink mattes in here. You have really beautiful blue turquoise colors. You have some pops and neutrals, but I really like this palette because they didn't just make this, you know, 2 pops of color and then a bunch of neutrals. I love the tones of neutrals that you get in here. Like you have this lighter yellowy mustard one, and then you have this deep, dark, deepening shade, which I love that they put this one in here. And they have like this orangey one, but honestly, this palette isn't really that neutral, but it's also a great palette for people that don't love too much color. I think that this is a great way for some people to wear color that is like more toned down and you don't feel intimidated by color. Like you could do the orange and the blue. I love wearing those 2 together with the blue shimmer all over the lid. It's gorgeous. I love this matte turquoise blue. This shimmer turquoise blue. It's phenomenal. One of my favorite shades in the palette. It's just beautiful, and I love these 3 shimmers up here. The bronzy gold, this beautiful, like darker bronzy color, and then this Cali Girl shade is one of my all-time favorite inner corner highlights from ColourPop. It really does pop on the inner corners. I just love this palette. I can't wait to use it again. It's one of my go-tos during the summer season, and I'm really excited to keep on using it. So that is the first palette from ColourPop. I'm not going to swatch too much in this video because I've talked about these and swatched them a million times. I think I did a full review on this palette if you guys want to check that out. But that is the first palette from ColourPop. And then the second one is the ColourPop and Powerpuff Girls palette. This one was not my favorite color story-wise, but when it comes to the colors in here and the packaging and everything about it, This palette really makes me want to use it in the summertime because you have some really beautiful pops of neon. Again, on the bottom row, you have like this beautiful hot pink, this green, this blue. Those are all great. Honestly, the mattes in here are really, really good, especially these three. These two are still very nice formula-wise. They just don't perform as well as I would like them to. And then you have like this brown, which is basically the only grounding shade you can use in this palette. But I really love the pops of color in here. I love this neon green shimmer. I love this orangey shimmer. I just wish they would have put like a hot pink shimmer in here, but this is still a beautiful color as well. The shimmers in here are stunning. Like, I don't have any issues with the formula in this palette. I think they're all wonderful. It's just the color story didn't quite come together for me, but as far as the shades go, I think that this is a beautiful palette for summertime, especially if you don't want to wear something too heavy or like something too dramatic. You can just take one of these in the crease, pop one of these on the lid, and it's such a beautiful, like, soft summer look, and it looks like that you put a lot of effort into your makeup, but it's such an easy look to do. And then you could just pop like any of these shimmers on the inner corners and you're good to go, and it's such a beautiful look for summertime. So yeah, I think I've only used this palette maybe once or twice so far. I'm not sure if I whipped it out again, but I know I used it like a month ago or something, but I would like to use it a bit more often. So but yeah, I'm really excited to start using this more. I used it a lot when I got it, so hopefully I'll be able to dip my toes into it again. And then the last ColourPop palette is actually a palette that I just added to my collection, and only after using it today and yesterday, because it is the palette I'm wearing on my eyes today. It's the most recent palette to my collection in general, and my most recent ColourPop palette, and I'm already in love with this for the summertime. And this is the ColourPop in the Limelight 9-pan palette. I really don't have too many summer palettes from ColourPop, and I just thought that this palette was such a pretty, like, summer palette that I'm so glad I picked it up. And I think that isn't this so pretty? Like, I think they did a wonderful job with the color story with this, with the packaging, everything. It just screams summertime to me. You have these great lime green mattes in here. You have these really nice neutral colors, but not too neutral. You have these wonderful pops of shimmer of lime green and like different tones of lime green. And then this Star Power shade is such a pretty inner corner highlight. And I really enjoyed the formula of this. I just tried it out for the first time yesterday, and I'm already loving the formula of this way more than the All Amethyst palette. I think that this palette is so pretty. And again, I think that this is a great palette for people that are a little intimidated by color. I think that this is a great way. All three palettes that I'm showing you guys aren't like too colorful. I think they're all palettes that you can just like dip your toes into color. Maybe the Powerpuff Girls one is a little bit too colorful for you, but I even feel like this one is kind of more like a toned down version of green. And I think that green eye looks, I am going to be so into green looks this summer. For some reason, all I want to do is wear green eyeshadow. So, and I'm really inspired by color for this summertime. So I really want to just do as many colorful looks as I can. Excuse me. I think that this is going to be such a beautiful palette for that. I'm just in love with it. I think it's a great palette, and I love the formula of this. The metallics are rich and beautiful on the lids. The mattes perform really well. I think that this is a really nice palette. So what I'm wearing on my eyes today is I kind of took a combo of Almost Famous and Debut on my crease. Then I used the shade Layout to define the crease, and then I just took one of my ColourPop singles in Cloud 9 just to deepen up the outer corners, because there's not really a really deep brown in here, and I just wanted a little bit more definition on the outer corners. I could have just easily took this one and deepened up the outer corners as well, because I do that a lot with palettes that don't have like a deepening shade, but I kind of like that about this palette because then you can just do really simple green looks and you don't really have to think about it too much. And again, in the summertime, you just want to pop on a couple of shadows and be on your way because it gets hot out. So, but I'm just saying that's what I did. And then for my lid shade, I used the shade Playdate and I put that all over my lid. And it's such a beautiful, like, olivey toned green. I love it. And then I just popped Star Power on my inner corners. Like I said, it is such a gorgeous inner corner highlight, and I absolutely love it. That really is the only inner corner highlight in here, though. But honestly, I think that this is such a wonderful palette to do such a simple green look. And that's all I did on my eyes today. And then I just popped on Max Blanc Type on my brow bone. I just want to swatch a couple of these for you guys. Honestly, the shimmers in here are so much softer and buttery than most of the palettes that I've tried from ColourPop this year. I wasn't originally going to get this palette, and then pretty much Morgan Turner, and look how pretty those are. And I forget who else. I think Angelique Nyquist really loved this, but honestly, it was really Morgan Turner that got me to get this palette because she said that this was her favorite ColourPop palette from ColourPop this year. And she's not like absolutely obsessed with ColourPop sometimes, and she said you need this palette for summer. She said it's great. She said it's my favorite palette that they did this year. And I was like, damn, the quality is really, really good in here. I was like really surprised. I'm like, the quality reminds me of like the Limoncello and the Plush Like Me palette, which I love those two palettes. So we have Booked, Palms, and After Party. Just so pretty, and I think that this is such a wonderful palette for summertime. So yeah, I think this is a great pick as well, and I've been absolutely loving it so far, and I look forward to using it every time. So I'm excited to test out the other two shades, but I can already tell I'm going to love them. So it's just such a good palette. All right, so next palette that's not ColourPop. All the rest of the palettes are from different brands. This is my all-time favorite summer palette, and I use this every summer. I've already used it twice this summer season, and I just love it every single time I use it, and that is the Give Me Glow Extra Spicy palette. This palette is phenomenal quality. You guys know how much I absolutely love Give Me Glow Cosmetics and their formula. Their formula is absolutely amazing. And honestly, you could not go wrong. If you're a warm tone lover, you would absolutely love this palette. The mattes in here are so rich and pigmented, but they're not like too like hard to work with. They're never dry. They just blend out so super buttery, and they're so gorgeous. And then the 3 pops of shimmer are all you need in this palette. It's just the perfect balance of mattes and shimmers. I never find that I have to reach for another palette with this because I have a deepening red shade, and I have like a deepening like orangey red. Like, you think that these look very similar, but they're 2 different tones of red. Like, one's a red orange and one is a like more reddish tone color. And then the shimmers in here are so stunning. Like, I just don't, you just need this palette. If you love warm tones, you're gonna thank me later because this palette is wonderful quality. After I swatch these shimmers, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, these are my all-time favorite shimmer formula over any brands. They just are so blinding on the eyes. Look at that. Like, are you kidding me? So that one is Ghost Pepper, and this one is On Fire. I mean, if these don't scream summer to you, they are so stunning in person, and they just reflect beautifully on the eyes. And they are so wet looking on the eyes. And here are some of the mattes. Like, are you kidding me with that pigmentation? And they are so dang pigmented. Look at that. Woo! I just wanted to swatch this palette for you guys to just show how beautiful it is because their formula is amazing. So this one is Flaming Hot, and this one is Chili Pepper. I mean, you can't ask for any more opaque shadows than these. And I just love Give Me Glow. So I just, of course, needed to talk about this palette because I absolutely Love it for the summertime. It's my favorite warm tone eyeshadow palette because it's intense, but it's not like too intense. I actually just wore this palette to the city on Saturday. I wanted to do like an orange moment, so I did like an orange. I used, of course, this color in the crease, and then I put like, I think 24 karat wings all over the lid, and it was such a pretty look. And I absolutely love Gimme Glow to wear for like a long amount of time because it always lasts so well, and it just looks beautiful. So I absolutely love this palette. You guys know, if you know, you've been watching my channel for a little while, Gimme Glow's Extra Spicy Palette's one of my favorites. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about two Oden's Eye palettes. The first one is such a good summer palette, you guys, and I hope I can use this a little bit more. I've used it a couple times, like twice, but I'm hoping to use it a bit more. So the first one is the Oden's Eye and Fancy Faces, the Hummingbird palette. This is just such a gorgeous summer palette, and really, like, her inspiration for this was basically her home country, which is Jamaica. And that's basically all I think about when I look at this palette. Like, isn't this such a gorgeous summer palette, you guys? You have these gorgeous pops of shimmer. You have this beautiful lime green shade. You have this beautiful turquoise. You have this beautiful, like, deeper blue shimmer. You have this wonderful multi-chrome here. Like this pinky multi-chrome that shifts so many beautiful colors. You have these wonderful deepening blue mattes. It's just so pretty. I love this palette so much for summertime. And unfortunately, this palette is not available anymore because the original Legendary Diversa collection is no longer available. But they killed it with this collection, and I just thought that this palette was such a beautiful summer palette. So I had to give it a shout out. It's kind of more of a companion palette because there are more shimmers than mattes. But the mattes, with the mattes that you have in this palette, you can create some gorgeous looks. And I've been kind of like playing around with them a little bit more. And I'm really, really excited to see what else I can do with this palette because I really, really want to use it again. It's just gorgeous. I recently wore the shade Feathers, and I used this for work a couple of weeks ago. And it was just such a pretty look. And I think before that, I used the orangey shimmer, and it's wonderful. But the Oden's Eye is so pigmented, and the shimmers are stunning. So I had to mention this palette. So I'm hoping to get more use out of that one. And then the second one from Oden's Eye, I pretty much use this whenever I want to. But I think that this is such a pretty summer palette as well. So the other one is also from the Legendary Diversa collection, which is the It's Judy Time Red Dragon palette. So this one is also a warm tone palette. If you guys didn't know, I love warm toned eyeshadows. They are my absolute favorite ones to wear. But again, this is such a beautiful summer palette. You have this really vibrant like red orange in here. You have these really beautiful like, I love how they're all like warm tone orangey mattes. I could just live in this section of the palette and be happy. But these are all such great mattes that go with the shimmers. And I love that you have so many different matte options in here. But the lid shades that you get in here are so stunning. I love all three of these palettes so much. But I really do have a sweet spot for this one. And it's funny because out of the three of them, I don't watch Judy as often as the Fancy Face and Annette's Makeup Corner. But Annette's Makeup Corner is much more of a winter palette for me. But she definitely made a warm tone palette of my dreams, let me tell you, because these are all amazing. The mattes are just, again, so pigmented and amazing. And the shimmers are stunning. My favorite shade is Luna, which is the multi-chrome. It is so stunning. I love this beautiful gold, these amber tone shimmers. It's just a gorgeous palette. So I just wanted to mention this one as well, because I also think that this is a stunning summer palette too. So those are the two palettes from Oden's Eye. Okay, so next up, I do have this palette from Glamlite. I think that this is such a cute summer palette, and this is the Glamlite Pizza Meat Lovers palette. This is one of the pizza slice palettes, and I think that Glamlite make such fun packaging. I know that the food themed packaging isn't for everybody, but I just think it's adorable because look how it folds over. I mean, come on. If that's not aesthetically pleasing, I don't know what is. I think this palette is so much fun. And it's such a pretty, like, summer color story because you have, like, these really pretty orangey tones. You have this really pretty matte orange. You have this pretty pink, this really, really matte red, which is one of my favorite reds that I have. And then you have some grounding neutrals. And then you have 5 wonderful shimmers. And these shimmers are stunning. Oh my god, I love this palette. I really want to use it again soon. This one is Bacon, and then let's do the matte red for you guys, just to swatch a couple of them. But these are so good, and Glamlite's formula, of course, is a very beloved formula for good reason, because they have wonderful products. So this is Crushed Red Pepper, and that one is Bacon, and Bacon is such a beautiful, like, sparkly shimmer all over your lid. Any of these shimmers are so gorgeous, and they're just going to sweep across the lid beautifully, but I just think it's such a pretty summer palette. Like, you can do a more orangey tone red look. You could do something a little bit more neutral. You could do something pinky tone, and they're all just so pretty. So I think this is such a fun palette, and what doesn't scream summer more than eating a slice of pizza? I mean, of course, I eat pizza whenever I want to, but this is just such a cute one, so I love that one as well. Okay, next up, I'm trying to think about which other palette I want to talk about next. Okay, so the next palette is by Haus Labs, and this is the Lady Gaga Haus Labs Stupid Love palette. Now, this palette is not my absolute favorite formula-wise, but when it comes to the color story, you could probably use this in the fall and winter as well, but I do think that this is a really fun summer palette as well because you have these really pretty warm tones on this side, but you also have these beautiful blues, and honestly, when I want to go for a blue look, these are the shades that I'm going to be using. I've said this time and time again, I think that Lady Gaga's matte formula is so, so good. These matte blues here, some of the best mattes I've ever used. And these mattes over here, they're just great. It's just the shimmers that aren't the best in this palette. But the mattes in here are wonderful. I'm excited for her rebrand. I just wish that these shimmers were a little bit less harder pressed because they are very hard to pick up in the pan. But it's such a pretty summer palette, and I think that this would be a really fun addition to anybody's collection. I don't think this palette is available anymore though. But it is a really fun palette for summertime. And I am intending to do a blue look or two probably this summer. Because again, like I told you guys, I'm very inspired by color. But you could also do blue and red. You can do just blue. You can do orange. I think that this palette's a very versatile color story. And I think you can do a lot of fun looks with it. I just wish that the shimmer formula was better. But I think color story wise, this is a really pretty palette for summertime. So that is the next palette. Okay, just 4 more palettes, and most of these are more toned down palettes. So the next one is the Cindy Grace Summer Days palette. This is the only Cindy Grace palette that I have in my collection, but how can I not include it when it's literally called Summer Days? I don't know if I talked about it in my fall palettes, but if I did, I'm also mentioning it in this video. Some of these palettes might be a bit crossover palettes because I use them not just one season. I either use them a couple of seasons or I use them whenever I want to. Like, just because I'm mentioning them for a certain season doesn't mean I'm limited to use it in that season. I use a palette whenever I want to, but I'm just saying out of my collection, these are my favorite summer palettes, and I think that this is such a beautiful summer neutral palette. Because Cindy Grace eyeshadows are so beautiful, and their shimmers are just so vibrant and wet looking on the lid, and their mattes blend out like a dream. And I think that this is such a pretty warm tone summer palette for anyone that wants something like a little bit more toned down. This really is a wonderful palette, and I just love it. I love the matte orange. I love the deeper mattes in here, and these shimmers, like, you guys know I love these tones of shimmers, like this bronzy color and this more champagne-y gold, and then this lighter white gold color. They're all gorgeous. So You guys know I love Cindy Grace, and Cindy Grace is such a beautiful formula. All right, so we got 3 more palettes to talk about. The next one is another warm tone palette, and this is kind of an old school palette that I haven't used in quite a while. Like, really, I haven't touched this palette, but I wanted to mention it because I think I might get some use out of it this summer season. And a classic but a good palette is the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. Honestly, I don't know what's going on with Urban Decay these days, but back when this palette came out and when they were releasing naked palettes that people were actually still interested in, this palette hit. Like, this one was really, really nice. And this was my favorite warm tone palette for a long time, and it's still a really good warm neutral tone palette. I knew as soon as this palette came out, I knew I had to have it. And it's just such a good palette, you guys. I think that when they came out with this palette was really when they started releasing more mattes in their palettes and less shimmers. And I love, like, you could go from very light to medium tone warm tones to very dark, and you have a lot of good options for that. Like, I love that you get these 2 options for the outer corners. You get these 2 for the crease, and this for the crease, or this for the crease. And then you have 2 really nice brow bone highlights, and then the shimmers in here are so pretty. And I love that you only have like 4 in here, but I think that they all work beautifully together. So this is a really nice warm tone palette, and if you guys are looking for a good classic one, I'm pretty sure that they still sell it. You can't really go wrong with this one. It is a little pricey, but you do get the brush, and I still think that this was a good palette for the time. And I still think it would be a fun palette if you decided to get it now. Like, we still got to appreciate the old palettes. So that's why I decided to mention this one as well. And then I think this one was in my spring palettes, but I'm going to mention it for my summer palettes as well, because I also use this palette throughout the summertime as well. And I'm talking about the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. I did use this a few weeks ago. And this is still one of my most used spring summer palettes. I really do enjoy this color story a lot. It's one of my favorite color stories in my collection. I love these warm tone neutrals, and then you have these yellowy shades. You have like these pinky tones, and then you have these beautiful bronzy shimmers. Some of these shimmers are some of my favorites to use for the summer season. That's why I whip it out time and time again. I love this purple shimmer. Natasha Denona's formula is so good, and this was actually my second Natasha Denona palette. The last one I picked up was the retro palette back in November, so I actually haven't picked up a Natasha Denona palette this year. But I was so good with this palette after I got it. I didn't pick up another one till the retro palette, but this palette is really, really good. And I really love using it for the summertime because you can, again, go in a bunch of different directions with this palette, and it ends up being so pretty. And I really love the mid-tone size of the midi size of the Natasha Denona palettes, because I think it's such a perfect size. It's not too big, and also the $65 palettes are honestly the only ones that I get because they're not that expensive. I always wait for the VIB sale if I decide to purchase one. And they're a really nice size. And then the last palette, I did mention this in my fall palettes, but I think that this is a great summer palette as well. And initially when I bought this palette, I bought it, I believe, in September or August before the summer season was over, because I was trying to use it in the summertime. But then I found myself using it more during the fall time because I think it's such a beautiful fall palette. But this is a great summer palette too, and I'm talking about the Beauty Bay 16 Pan Fiery palette. You could still use this in the summertime because you have these beautiful warm tone mattes. You have these beautiful shimmers. You have like these oranges, these reds, these deeper chocolatey browns, and then you have these wonderful pops of shimmer. And you guys know how much I love Beauty Bay's formula. This was actually my #1 palette last year. It beat out all the rest, and I still love it, and I try to use it as much as I can because it's such a great go-to warm tone neutral palette. You can't beat Beauty Bay's prices. This was like a $10 palette, and the quality is honestly almost Natasha Denona level, even better sometimes, because I love Beauty Bay's formula. It's not for everybody, but I think their formula is fantastic for the price, very high quality, and I think this palette is so beautiful for the summertime. So yeah, that is it, you guys. Those are all my favorite summer palettes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819. And check out my Poshmark at the same handle. And let me know if you guys have tried any of these palettes. Are any of these palettes your favorites? Let me know. I'm very nosy. And if you guys want to see any videos on these palettes, they will be in... You can just search my channel, and I've done first impressions on all of these. The one for the In the Limelight palette will be up before this video goes up, so you guys will probably see that, but right before this video goes up. So yeah, I love you guys. Bye!